Everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As superintendent of the schools, it will be my duty and honor to preside over this meeting as secretary of the board as stipulated in the Florida statutes. First, we will have the oath ceremony for our re-elected school board members, Karen Brill in District 3, Erica Whitfield in District 4, Marsha Andrews in District 6, and Dr. Deborah Robinson in District 7. Following the oath ceremony, they will each have an opportunity to make comments. We will then move on to the organizational portion of the meeting, which will include the selection of the school board chair and vice chair. Once the voting is complete, I will turn the meeting over to the board chair, who will then preside over the remaining of the meeting. We are happy to have the Honorable Bradley Harper from the County Criminal Division of the 15th Judicial Circuit with us to swear in all 4 re-elected board members. Welcome, Judge Harper. Board members, please report to the dais.
Please come down.
As they proceed to the floor, I want to let you all know that this is ceremonial swearing in, as these 4 board members were officially sworn in on November the 20th, 2018. The date and state mandates as their first day in office for this term by the board. Judge Harper, please proceed.
I am so glad to be with you, and congratulations to our board members. If all 4 would line up in a single file line.
Yeah, I know, right? You want to go in order? Okay, we're in order now. Okay. Sort of order.
Raise your right hand. I'm going to swear everyone in at the same time. And repeat after me. I do solemnly swear.
I do solemnly swear.
Or affirm.
Or affirm.
That I will support.
That I will support.
Protect.
Protect.
And defend.
And defend.
The Constitution.
The Constitution.
And government of the United States.
And government of the United States.
And of the state of Florida.
And of the state of Florida.
That I am duly qualified.
That I am duly qualified.
To hold office under the Constitution.
To hold office under the Constitution.
Of this state.
Of this state.
And that I will well.
And that I will well.
And faithfully.
And faithfully.
Perform the duties.
Perform the duties.
Of Palm Beach County School Board member.
Of Palm Beach County School Board member.
Of which I am now about to enter.
Of which I am now about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations to the people of Palm Beach County and to our school board members on their new term.
Thank you so much. So happy. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Harper. We appreciate your time with us today.
Did you want a picture?
You guys want a picture? Let's take a picture.
So, Amity.
She'll move that, that's fine.
I'm sorry. At this time, I will invite each of the newly sworn-in board members to make their individual comments. We will start with Ms. Whitfield.
Thank you. I think this probably says a lot more about me 4 years later, is that I didn't actually prepare any remarks. So I just want to say really briefly that this job has been the absolute pleasure of my life. Serving Palm Beach County, it just means so much to me, the opportunity to be able to do this every day and to work on issues that I feel are the most important things you can do. I gave a speech over the weekend that talked about leadership to a group of students at St. Aloysius. It was the military ball, and the message that I tried to send home with them was that it is so important that you do something every day that matters. and that you should spend your time working on things that really make a difference in your community. And because of you all and because of your support of me, I have the opportunity to do that every single day. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and that I appreciate the support. My family's not here because, again, 4 years later, I guess we've all moved on. But I do want to say a quick thank you to my husband and to my daughter who support me all the time and really, put up with me coming home late and having all these crazy things that I have to ask them and get their support on. So I want to say a quick thank you to them. And then I'd also like to say a really quick thank you to Maria Baez, who's here, my assistant, who spends a lot of time talking me down off cliffs, and I think spends about 90% of her day scheduling me because I'm always asking for a meeting here, there, everywhere, and so she has to spend a lot of time doing that. So I want to say huge thank you to her. I've had her for this whole 4 years, and hopefully I'll keep her for the next 4. She's absolutely fabulous. So thank you, everyone, and thank you so much to my fellow board members. This has been absolutely my honor. Thank you.
So I guess it's my turn, and I just want to say first and foremost, thank you to all of my constituents, for all of my community, for your faith in me, for your trust in me, for working with me. We work through difficult issues, and I love that we can agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, we're all working towards that same goal, and I thank you for supporting me once again. But tonight's my opportunity to right a wrong. For those of you who may remember way back when I first got elected, when I was making my thank yous, and I was never in the boardroom seeing the congratulatory speeches, I really was so nervous I didn't know what I was doing. And I thanked my ex-husband, and I didn't thank my now husband. So at that time, Alicia Gent came running over to me. She was our board clerk with a note that said, "Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Stuart." So I know that my husband is out there right now watching. So Stuart Davis, thank you so much for your love and support. And also thank you to my son, Matthew, who may also be watching. Matthew is the one child who hasn't left the nest yet. And what I want to really thank them for is for starting to understand that eating dinner at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock at night is really okay to be normal. Because as school board members, we're out in the community. I have 2 more events after this tonight. And it's very hard when you get home 9, 9:30, 10 o'clock. I tell everybody in my family, as long as you eat before midnight, it's still that same day. So thank you very much. Thank you to my loving family. And I look forward to working with all of you again.
Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. It's my pleasure to service the students, the families, all of the schools, the people of Palm Beach County as the school board member for District 6 for 4 more years. I take great honor in working very hard with all segments of the community. All of the stakeholders, starting with the children first, taking the stand for them to make sure that they have everything necessary for success. To be able to be elected for another term means everything. It means that I can complete many of the projects that I started back in 2010. Some of them have been completed, but as we move forward and knowing student achievement is an ongoing process so that we don't leave any children behind, there's always work to do. I look over and I see my wonderful, wonderful executive assistants, Joyce Edison. You keep up with me everywhere I go. From the Glades to the Western region to Boca Raton, everywhere I am. You make sure parents can find me. I'm using my cell phone, but you have 2 or 3 in your office to track me down to make sure that I can meet the needs of all of the stakeholders. Having worked in the school board for many, many years and retiring in 2010, I've devoted my life to make a difference from another angle, from the policy level, from the community level, to make sure that we have complete dialogue with all stakeholders to have a voice for what's needed and best for children. Certainly representing you at the school board is one aspect, but representing you with all of the stakeholders make me so happy that I have a listening ear, a voice to make a difference. So being selected again is a great honor, It was a great honor not to be opposed, that people saw my good work and said we want her to keep doing what she's doing. And I promise all of you, especially the children, I will always be here for you. I will always be here for the schools, the community, the parents, everybody, the principals, the teachers, everybody. And I will service you to the best of my ability for excellence. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So it's been 18 years since I was sworn in for the first time. That is a generation. I've seen a lot. I know a lot. My children were in elementary school and high school, and now my grandchildren are in pre-K in elementary school in Palm Beach County. I was a full-time practicing physician, and now I'm retired and able to dedicate all of my time to my version of the work as a school board member. So much has changed, most for the better, but so much remains the same. We continue to have disparities. We continue to have children that are somehow left behind. So my campaign season lasted more than a year. I had to play politician for some time, which I found to be distasteful. But I also really got back to my community. I was not very efficient as a campaigner. I tended to spend way too long on the doorsteps of parents and teachers and other community members, listening to their concerns and their proposed solutions. It was fantastic. Fortunately, I had a lot of volunteers who continued knocking on doors while I participated in some of the most important conversations of my school board career. I want to thank those volunteers because they really got the work done. I remain uplifted by the hugs received due to my advocacy for a child or a group of children that I don't even remember. I cried many times as I realized that people see my work. I was told stories of things that I said and things that I did that made a positive difference in people's lives. And it gave me the courage and the strength to continue knocking on those doors and speaking my truth. So even when I felt alone, I now know that I was spiritually uplifted. So I am again inspired, I'm again energized, I'm again grounded, and I'm again focused on the work that I am called to do. I still believe, in the words of Malcolm X, that education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. I am recommitted to the fight for equity in Palm Beach County schools and in our community, to fight for each child, to truly prepare for their future. So let me be clear, in case you didn't know. I am not here to support the district in isolation. I'm here to support the district in supporting the school communities to support and develop our children, all of our children. We must leverage every vote, every contract, every relationship, and every meeting to that end, because as it was 18 years ago, it is still all about the children. Thank you.
Please join me in recognizing our entire school board team, please. At this time, I'd like to have Ms. Bass please call the roll.
District 1, Barbara McQuinn.
Here.
District 2, Chuck Shaw. Here. District 3, Karen Brill.
Here.
District 4, Erica Whitfield.
Here.
District 5, Frank Barbieri.
Here.
District 6, Marcia Andrews.
Here.
District 7, Deborah Robinson.
We will now move to new business and begin by calling for nominations for the school board chair and vice chair. The floor is now open for nominations for school board chair. Ms. Brill?
I nominate Frank Barbieri.
Ms. Whitfield?
I nominate Mr. Shaw.
Are there any other nominations for the office of chair? The nominations are Mr. Frank Barbieri and Mr. Chuck Shaw. Each board member will cast one vote for their choice of chair. The clerk will now conduct the roll call vote, and following will tally the votes.
Barbara McQuinn,
My vote for chair is Mr. Barbieri.
Chuck Shaw, Karen Brill,
I vote for Mr. Barbieri.
Erica Whitfield,
Mr. Shaw.
Frank Barbieri,
I'll vote for myself.
Marcia Andrews,
Mr. Frank Barbieri.
Deborah Robinson,
Mr. Barbieri.
I am pleased to announce that Mr. Frank Barbieri will be the school board chair for the upcoming year. The floor is now open for nominations for school board vice chair. Ms. McQuinn.
I nominate Mr. Chuck Shaw for vice chair.
Are there any other nominations?
I nominate Mrs. Brill.
Are there any other nominations? The nominations for school board vice chair are Mr. Chuck Shaw and Ms. Karen Brill. Each board member will cast one vote for their choice of school board vice chair. The clerk will now conduct a roll call vote, and following will tally the votes.
Barbara McQuinn,
Chuck Shaw.
Chuck Shaw, Karen Brill,
I'll vote for myself.
Erica Whitfield,
Mr. Shaw.
Frank Barbieri,
Mrs. Brill.
Marcia Andrews,
Mrs. Brill.
Deborah Robinson,
Chuck Shaw.
I am pleased to announce that Mr. Chuck Shaw will be the school board vice chair for the upcoming school year. At this time, I will turn the meeting over to the board chair, Mr. Frank Barbieri, for the remaining of the reorganization meeting. Following that, we will take a 5-minute break before beginning the workshops. Thank you all.
It's reorg. Item on there. Okay, Mr. Superintendent, the item on the agenda is for the proposed list of dates for the 2019 regular board meetings. Would you make a recommendation, please?
I recommend the board approve the proposed list of dates for the 2019 regular board meetings.
Have a motion? Mrs. Brill, seconded by Mrs. Andrews. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Passes unanimously, 7-0.
nope, there's 2 more items.
The next item is the organization documents.
Yes, sir. I recommend the board authorize the chair and superintendent to complete and execute the documents required by Florida Statute 1001.371 relating to this reorganization meeting, including a copy of the unadopted minutes of this meeting, and to forward the file and file them with the Florida Department of Education.
We have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item are the committee assignments.
Yes, sir. I recommend the board review and approve the list of school board committee assignments for 2019.
We have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Mrs. Brill. Any discussion? Mrs. Whitfield?
I have a couple of things. The first thing is the Criminal Justice Commission. We currently have the contact as Mr. Van Arnhem, who no longer works for the county. I'm meant to look up, but I forgot to look up the name of the woman who's our current contact. It's one of the new assistant county administrators, so you're going to fix that? Great. The other thing that I wanted to ask was that with the work that I'm doing on the Early Learning Coalition, I was wondering if Ms. Andrews would allow me to take on the alternate role in that section.
Mrs. Andrews?
Well, I was hoping that we could go through all of them, but...
Sure, we can go through each one.
Could you say which one you were talking about, Mrs.?
The Early Learning Coalition, but we can start at the beginning.
Yeah, I would like for us to go through
All right, so
them.
let's start at the top. We have the first item is the American Association of Caregiving Youth. That's got Mrs. Andrews. Do we need a backup person on that?
Well, I was hoping that maybe I could maybe be the backup and someone else could maybe take the lead.
Mrs. McQuinn?
Knowing that before I came on the board, my colleagues had to pick up the slack with not having someone sitting in this seat, so I'm happy to fill in on something like that.
Oh, that's great.
All right. You've got it.
Thank you.
Mrs. Andrews will be the backup. Audit Committee, I currently serve on there, and Mrs. Whitfield is the backup. I'd like to stay as the representative for the board. Mrs. Whitfield, do you want to stay as?
No, I've never, ever been. You always go, so.
This one tomorrow, in fact.
Happy to pretend that I'm going to go.
You can join. You can join me anytime you like. The Center for Creative Education Board of Directors, Mrs. McQuinn, you're the primary. Want to stay?
Yes.
Do we need a backup for you? Do you attend all the meetings? We don't need a backup. All right. Children's Services Council, Dr. Robinson is the primary. No alternates are permitted. Want to stay? Yes. Communities and Schools, Mrs. Andrews.
Yes.
We need a backup for you.
No.
Community Alliance, Mrs. Brill.
Yes.
No alternates are allowed, so it stays with Mrs. Brill. Cork, I'm represent the school board at Cork. Would somebody like to be a backup?
Not even a little bit.
Thank you all for volunteering so readily.
Well,
No. Okay, Dr. Robinson said she would be the backup on that, so the clerk will note that, please. Council of Great City Schools, Mrs. Andrews and
Yes.
Dr. Robinson is the backup. Stay
yes, yes.
Criminal Justice Commission, Mrs. Whitfield and Mrs. Andrews is the alternate.
I would
Love
really love to
wanna-
take that one.
You want to be primary on
Yes. Mm-hmm.
it? All right. All right.
Mrs. Whitfield, you want to move to second or you want off?
Yeah, I'd love second. I do
Okay.
enjoy that committee a lot, so I'll be happy to be second.
Thank you.
Okay. Cultural Council Board of Directors.
Happy to give that.
Dr. Robinson said she'd be happy to give that up. Mrs. McQuinn, would you like to take that? Anybody else?
All right, let me ask, what is the time commitment?
1 hour once a quarter. It's
Sure.
really short.
You'll take it? Okay. The Institute for Cultural Advancement, Dr. Robinson. Do we need a backup? You want to give it up?
When is their
Institute for
meeting?
Cultural Advancement. It's tied to the Cultural Council. So Mrs. McQuinn is reluctantly saying yes.
Sure.
Sorry.
I said it was reluctant.
There's only 3 meetings.
Early Learning Coalition of Palm Beach County, Dr. Robinson is primary, Mrs. Andrews is alternate. Staying the same.
I would like to be the alternate if possible, because I've been doing so much work with VPK. Is that okay?
I'll give you that one back,
Thank you.
Erica. How about that?
Thank you.
So you're both,
Well, I'm going to give it to Erica. She
Okay.
said she'd like to be the backup.
all right.
Or the primary if Dr. Robinson's wants to.
Pardon me,
want it.
Mrs. Whitfield?
I said, or the primary if Dr. Robinson doesn't want it anymore. Does she still want it?
Well, we can make a deal.
Okay, let's make a deal.
So the part that is very important to me with Early Learning Coalition at this point in time is the fact, Well, that you know, we drafted a appropriations bill for the Riviera Beach Pre-K Collaborative that is managed by Early Learning Coalition. And so my request would be that whoever takes that, the primary role, agrees to closely monitor that, or I promise you I will come to the public meetings and act up. I'm just telling you.
It's a lot of pressure.
So
I actually, it's something that I want to follow your lead on and what you've done. And I think that what you've done has been great. And so I'd like to continue that exact work. That's really what I think is very special about what you're working on there. So I think I could do that, and it would be something that I would really like to do.
that's fine. I'm good with that.
Thank you. Do you want to be my alternate?
No.
No. Oh, good. We're back to Ms. Andrews.
All right, so that's Mrs. McQuinn for Early Learning Coalition, and Mrs. Andrews will stay. I mean, Mrs. Whitfield, I'm sorry.
Early learning.
Mrs. Andrews stays. The Education Foundation, Mrs. Brill, and the alternate is Mrs. Whitfield.
And I'm good staying there. Thank you.
Mrs. Whitfield, you okay with staying
Yep.
as alternate?
Thank you.
Families First of Palm Beach County, Mrs. McQuinn. You need an alternate? Okay. Federal Relations Network, Mrs. Andrews. Mrs. Brill is backup. Staying the same? Yes. Finance Committee, Mrs. McQuinn. You need an alternate? Okay. FSBA, Florida School Labor Relations Service Board of Directors, Mr. Shaw. You need an alternate? FSBA Board of Directors, Mr. Shaw. Pardon me?
You're saying it might have to be the board.
Board chair now.
No, I don't think it is. Yeah.
Which one? Which one are we talking about?
FSBA Board of Directors.
Yeah. I would certainly like to have that, Mr. Shaw.
Mr. Shaw, if you don't want to give it up, Mrs. Andrews is your backup. It's up to you.
Okay. I've been the backup.
Mrs. Brill?
Well, if we could backtrack then, Mrs. Andrews, if you're going to move on to the Board of Directors, are you going to take it over now for Mr. Shaw?
But he said he wants to keep it.
Oh, okay.
He wants to keep it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, never mind.
Okay. FSBA Legislative Committee, Mrs. Andrews.
I'll keep it.
And
Unless you
Mrs.
want it,
Brill is
Ms. Brill.
backup.
Would you like to have it?
Well, you know, you do such a great job with it and enjoy it, but we can piggyback together. I'll be your alternate.
Yeah, and we've done well together.
Yes, and we may tag team this year because we have a rough year ahead.
That's right.
Okay. Glades Career Readiness Roundtable, Mrs. Andrews said she doesn't want that anymore.
Oh, absolutely. I have to have that.
I don't think that's.
Do you need a
Have
backup?
to have that.
Backup?
I would love to have someone come and see what we do there as a backup. I don't need a backup, but I think it would be nice to have someone to come out sometimes.
I'll be your backup
Okay, Erica, that would be great.
of the Glades.
All right, so it's Mrs. Whitfield as the backup. Historical Society of Palm Beach County Board of Governors, Mrs. Whitfield is primary.
I'm happy to keep it or give it to somebody if they want it, whatever.
Anybody want it?
Yes.
They meet?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I want it.
You want it?
Dr. Robinson will take that. You want to be backup, Mrs. Whitfield?
Historical Society. Yes, that would be great.
Okay.
Sure, I'll be backup.
Homeless Advisory Board, Mrs. Whitfield.
I really don't want to give it up.
Okay. And Mrs. McQuinn is the backup. You want to stay? Okay. Intergovernmental Coordination Program, Mr. Shaw.
That committee meets once a year, sometimes twice. I don't mind.
Okay. Mrs. Whitfield, you're the backup.
Sure.
IROC, we have nobody on there.
Okay, Mr. Barbieri, IROC meets right before ISOC, and I usually show up during IROC, so I'd be happy to go on IROC.
Okay. We need a backup for IROC behind you, Mrs. Brill. Who would like to serve as a backup in case Mrs. Brill can't make it?
Oh, Miss Andrews wants it.
Mrs. Andrews.
And you're all always welcome to be there, because it's about our tax money.
So ISOC is Mrs. Brill. We same backup for that one. Mrs. Andrews. Mrs. Andrews is the backup. Pine Jog Board of Directors, Mr. Shaw. You'll stay. We need a backup for you, Mr. Shaw. No. School Health Advisory Council, Mrs. Brill.
Oh, wait, hold on. How did we pass juvenile justice?
Criminal justice.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So,
Juvenile Justice Commission, Mrs. Whitfield.
Juvenile justice is not one that I think loves me. I'm not particularly great at being there. So I've rearranged my schedule and I'm doing much better this year, but I do think it fits really well with criminal justice, and they love Miss Andrews. They miss her
And they do
desperately.
love me. I'll take it back. I'll
Who
take
doesn't
it
love
back.
you, Mrs.
They
Andrews?
love
Who
me.
doesn't love you? Okay. Well, Mrs. Andrews has it as primary.
I'm a little tired of the shadow that she has cast.
Mrs.
I'm
Whitfield.
like, oh, guys.
Mrs. Whitfield, you'll be the backup then, right?
Okay. I'm happy to.
Pine Jog Board of Directors, Mr. Shaw, we already hit that one. School Health Advisory Council, Ms. Brill,
Yes, I'm fine.
we need a backup.
I actually have used Erica when
Yeah,
I've
I'm
needed
happy
one,
to.
so.
Mrs. Whitfield will be the backup. Technology Advisory Committee, Mrs. McQuinn, you need a backup? Nope. Take Stock in Children, Mrs. Andrews,
Yes.
we need a backup.
Well, it's always nice to have one. Uh-huh.
Does anybody like to be a backup behind Mrs. Whitfield?
I'm very good at it, as my last year has shown.
Okay. Treasure Coast Work Group, Mrs. McQuinn, you need a backup? Nope. The Value Adjustment Board, I currently serve on there with Mr. Shaw as the alternate and Mrs. Whitfield as the second alternate.
I honestly think you have to drive too far for how short those meetings are. If you want me to do it, I'm happy to. It just seems like a long drive for you. I mean, if you enjoy it, please keep it up. But
I don't mind doing it on the days when we have a meeting that lasts more than 10 minutes. If not, I'll call one of either Mr. Shaw or Mr. Whitfield to fill in because you're right.
Live
A lot
really
of times the
close.
meetings last a couple hours, but sometimes they last 10 minutes. It takes an hour to get there and an hour to get back. Mr. Shaw, you want to stay as the alternate on that?
Yeah,
Okay, and Mrs. Whitfield is the second. Wellness Promotion Task Force, Mrs. Whitfield,
yeah, I enjoy it.
you need a backup?
Occasionally, it would be nice to have somebody.
Mrs. Andrews said she'd like to take that.
Thank you. Can I ask to add one more since we've hit the end? Have been appointed this past year as the representative on the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, which they asked me to be on because they need a school board representative. So I would love if we could include that because I do feel I'm representing this board. And the governor did make the appointment, but it's not that it couldn't change ever. So I could change at some point, but for this next year, could we put that on there?
So we need a motion to add that to the list.
Can I
Made by
motion
Mrs.
myself?
McQuinn, seconded by Mrs. Andrews. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. So it's the Treasure Coast, which, Paul?
Regional Planning Council?
Regional Planning Council, and Mrs. Whitfield, you want that as primary? And
Yeah.
who would be the backup?
Anybody that likes planning? Anybody like planning? Urban planning, schools and communities where they fit. It's really exciting. It's also in Stewart.
Okay, no.
Yay, look, we just won her over on
Mrs.
location.
McQuinn said she'd take that. All right, are there any other changes, Mrs. Andrews?
And this is not a change, but it's for Mrs. McQuinn. I'm so happy that you're going to help me with the American Association of Caregiving Youth. But those meetings are in Boca Raton. I always want to be transparent. And we'll work together because I've been doing all the Boca traveling, and you're coming from further than I'm coming from. So we will work together, okay? Thank you. It's a great group.
All right, any other changes? All right, we need a motion to approve this, the committee assignments for 2019. A motion made by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Mrs. Andrews. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And I believe that's the end of this agenda.
I have one more.
Oh, the Storm and Norman, just sure.
I recommend the board appoint Stormit Norim as the business community representative to the Value Adjustment Board.
Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by Mrs. Brill. So on this one, just so the board understands, at the Value Adjustment Board is comprised of 5 members. By statute, 1 has to be a school board member, 2 have to be county commissioners, and then the school board appoints 1 citizen representative, and the county commission appoints 1 citizen representative. Mr. Norm has been the appointee by the school board for a long, long time, well before I was on the Value Adjustment Board. All right, so we're ready to take a vote. All in favor?
Wait, hold it.
Yes. Yep.
So, do we ever change that? I mean, apparently not. I mean, it seems like it's room to consider other people possibly. Like, it was not on my radar. I don't know if it's on the radar, if there's any other business people out there who are itching to, participate in this activity, but it just seems peculiar to me that we just cut and paste, so to speak.
The only thing is, I know that the two representatives that are appointed by the school board and the city, the county commission, one has to be an owner of residential property and the other one has to be an owner of business property, and I'm not sure which one so if you want to table this until the next meeting, I can get information to the clerk on what his position is, and if somebody else wants to. Mrs. Rico?
I was just going to suggest that you pull out just this one vote so you can vote on the rest, so you need to amend.
Okay.
We already did vote on the other. Yes. All right, we have a motion to table, Mrs.
Yeah.
Dr. Robinson?
Yeah, I motion to table the appointment of the business community representative to the Value Adjustment Board.
To the December 12th meeting?
I would like to postpone to the January meeting. We could get some more information, because if we're going to consider other possibilities, I think we need more than a week.
When's the meeting? January 23rd?
Is there any reason that this particular item has to be decided in December, to anyone's knowledge? Business can't take place or something?
Yeah, I don't believe that. There's no more Value Adjustment Board meeting scheduled for December. If there's one that comes up in January, did we have an earlier meeting in January?
So I would table until the January 16th meeting.
All right, just in case there's a Value Adjustment Board meeting scheduled before the 16th, can we have a temporary approval of Storm and Norman to serve until the January 23rd school board meeting? Is it 23rd? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so amended. Yeah.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor by Dr. Robinson. Second, all in favor?
We allow him to continue.
This is on the amendment to put him on until the 23rd of January. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, the clerk is telling me we're done with this meeting, so we'll need a motion to adjourn.
You're going to rearrange seats?
Mrs. Whitfield, is that a motion?
No, I was just thinking you're going to rearrange everybody now.
The clerk says we need a 5-minute break. Dr. Robinson, I got a motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by Mrs. Andrews. All in favor, all opposed. Meeting's adjourned for 5 minutes.